Chapter 133, The Last Attempt, Hanyu's POV. Hanyu woke feeling strange. It took him an embarrassingly long time to realize that the strange sensation he was experiencing was simply being well rested. His body felt fine, and his mind felt more stable as well. Even as he came fully awake and remembered the situation he was in, he didn't feel immediately close to tears. It didn't feel quite so much like the end of everything as it had for the last few days. Has it really been so long since I got a full night's, days, sleep? The second thing Hanyu realized was that, despite his efforts to keep a respectful distance from his master as they settled into bed last night, he'd shifted in his sleep until he was curled around Antony. His arms were around the god, and he pulled him tightly against his chest. Some of his master's hair was in his mouth. A little of the previous day's panic reignited. How could he disentangle himself without waking Antony? Would his god be angry if he found that Hanyu was cuddling him again, despite being in disgrace? Or would he be angrier if his attendant woke him? Antony needed his sleep. Hanyu should just stay still and weather whatever displeasure might befall him when Antony woke. But he badly needed to piss. How long could he hold it? "Good morning," Antony said softly, shocking him from his internal debate. The god's voice was strange. There was a tentative, wistful note in it that Hanyu didn't know how to read. And, he realized, his master's enunciation was perfect. His tongue must be fully restored. "I'm sorry," Hanyu whispered. His words were slightly muffled by his mouth full of silver hair. He tried to spit some of it out without being too obvious. "Already?" Antony huffed, the strange, hopeful softness vanishing from his tone. "Do I at least get to know what you're sorry for?" Hanyu wasn't quite sure himself. Remorse for what he'd done hung over him, heavy and suffocating, but today it was a little easier to untangle the guilt from the fear. He was able to keep his voice calm. "I'm sorry for crowding you, my lord," he replied. It was the easiest answer, certainly easier than "I'm sorry for getting you hurt and Asao ruined," or "I'm sorry for disobeying you when you most needed me to be good." Antony stiffened a little in his arms. "Please don't be sorry for that. You know He hesitated, then continued. "I don't mind." That was true. Antony never complained about the way Hanyu wound himself around him in sleep. What had Hanyu done to deserve such a master? Nothing. If the last week's events proved nothing else, they certainly went to show that Hanyu's actions had no bearing on the wonderful things that inexplicably continued to happen to him. He shut his eyes and breathed in his god's scent, suddenly overcome with gratitude. "Hanyu?" Antony's voice was strangely small and breathless. His master was full of inexplicable tones today. Perhaps it was because he was being squashed. Hanyu pulled back, disentangling himself with regret from the chilly body in his arms. Antony was trying to make the bed when Hanyu got back from the washroom. It wasn't going very well, since the god still struggled to stand and walk on his own, but his movements were determined. He scowled down at the sheets as though they had personally offended him, manhandling them into an approximation of the tight precision which he usually imposed on the bed. "Let me help!" Hanyu cried, rushing forward. His master shot him a scowl. "I can manage." "But you shouldn't have to." Hanyu grabbed the sheets on the other side of the mattress, ignoring the god's growl of protest. "That's why you have me, my lord." Antony grunted, staring down at the sheets again instead of continuing to meet Hanyu's eyes. "That's hardly fair to you. I promise I won't wither away without your coddling. You don't need to worry about me." That was a strangely broad response to an offer to help with making the bed. Hanyu wasn't sure how to respond. He decided on silence, a choice he really ought to make more often, and smoothed the last wrinkles from his side of the mattress. "I thought we should go check on Esau, the god said at last, sounding resigned. If you still think it's best, I won't say anything to him about the plan for him to be Thad's. We'll just try to make sure he knows he's welcome here, always. The raw sincerity in his master's voice drew Hanyu's gaze and, unfortunately, put an end to his silence. Why does this matter so much to you? He caught Antony's offended glance and rushed to clarify. I mean, I know you're kind, my lord. No one knows that better than me. But you're going to a lot of trouble to try to make Esau feel better, even though he won't be yours anymore. Antony's shoulders slumped. He was under my protection, and I failed him. And you were under my protection too, but he was the one who helped you, not me. I owe him. What do you mean you owe him? You can't owe a human. Hanyu's brain caught up with the strangest part of his master's statement. And what do you mean you didn't help me? You saved our lives, my lord. He helped you first, Antony said dismissively. Anyhow, I didn't help him when I should have. It was Thad who saved him. It seems right for them to be together. Hanyu had to admit that there was something romantic about the idea of Esau belonging to his rescuer, but Antony plunged ahead before he could say as much. And Thad has always been good to you, too, and I know you want to be with Esau. The god slumped onto the edge of the bed and stared down at the sharp points of his knees. If you want to go with them, I promise you, I understand. Oh, gods, not this again! Hanyu couldn't cry. He couldn't use his tears to manipulate his poor master. Not again. He tried to remember every trick the priest had ever tried to hammer into his thick, unresponsive head. Relax your face. Do something with your hands. He clasped his hands together and focused on pressing his fingers to the beat of Sweet Choco. No, that's a bad choice. Sweet Choco just reminded him of that perfect golden afternoon when he had sung along with Antony's flute, when they had bickered over which songs were sadder, and Hanyu had been so unbelievably happy. Sometimes, he thought, the bitterness in looking back at joyful memories came from remembering how little he had appreciated them at the time. That wasn't the case for this memory. He had savored that day, exulting in every littlest moment and word, basking in his master's warm attention. No, the bitterness came from trying to remember what had made his stupid, petty defiance seem worth risking such bliss. I'll be watching moments like that from the outside now. I'm going to have to watch Thad adoring Esau while I hover around, the unnecessary extra human. Does Thad even want me? He didn't offer to take me. Is Antony going to order him to accept me? Gods, I know he'll be kind to me no matter what, but still. Don't think about it. Choose a different song, one we never played together. Hanyu tapped out Theodora's lei, working to keep his face relaxed and his eyes moving around the room. For once, the priest's strategies actually seemed to work. His vision cleared enough for him to focus on his god. Antony looked miserable. His shoulders were hunched as though he were standing in a sandstorm, his eyes fixed on Hanyu's face with a strange, pleading avidity. Why was he so unhappy about this latest attempt to get rid of his worthless, incompetent slave? Oh, of course, he hates giving punishments. Hanyu had cried and pleaded his way out of this fate 6 times. He couldn't do that to Antony again, not after everything his god had done for him. He had to accept his master's will. But why now? I didn't do anything so terrible yesterday, did I? I wasn't good, of course, not an acceptable offering, let alone the kind of exemplary service Antony deserves. But what changed his mind? The reasons didn't matter. What mattered was that he kept a clear head so he could say the things that he needed to say instead of breaking down. And there was so much he needed to say to his God in the little ration of time remaining for him to call him that. Hanyu moved around the bed and knelt at his master's feet where they dangled a few inches from the floor, bowing until his forehead rested on the boards between them. Don't cry. Say it all properly, so you can at least reduce the number of regrets you'll have to carry around for the rest of your miserable life. Of course, I'll go where you send me and serve however I'm commanded, my lord, he said, proud that his voice didn't break. But I hope it's all right if I keep trying to be better, not just to please my new master. Gods, those words were hard to choke out. But also in the hope that one day, if I can be worthier of you, you'll take me back. I know it's not likely, but maybe eventually I can get myself under control and stop being so, well, me. That's enough about what I want. He's listened to what I want far too many times already. You've been kinder than I dreamed a god could be, Hanyu continued in a near whisper. So much kinder than I've ever deserved, and being yours has made me happier than I've ever been in my life. Thank you for your unimaginable goodness to me, indulging my curiosity and telling me about animals and all of that. Thank you for saving my life. I'm so sorry for what I did. I'm sorry I took advantage of your mercy and couldn't take your punishments gracefully. A loud thump stopped him short. Hanyu jerked up to find Antony sprawled on the floor next to him, groaning softly from the pain of his impact and glaring ferociously. My lord! Hanyu reached out his hands, though he wasn't sure what he planned to do. Support his god? Pick him up and put him back on the mattress? Only to have the glowering deity bat them away. Shut up! Antony snarled. I told you, you never have to go away if you don't want to. This isn't... Hanyu, do you think I want you gone? Of course you do. Hanyu was startled into honesty, all his poise and speeches flying out of his head. After what I did... Antony cut him off. You keep saying it like that. What I did, like it was too awful to name. You went for a joyride to an island. It wasn't such a horrible crime we have to whisper about it for the rest of our lives. It's not about that, cried Hanyu. I disobeyed you after all you've done for me. Yes, and it saved your life. Antony squeezed his eyes shut. He would have killed you if he'd found you here. You and Asao both. I'm fucking grateful you happen to be feeling disobedient. What? Hanyu could only stare at his master, mind blank with shock. Of course it was better to be dead than disobedient. The priest had always been quite explicit on that point. But it was wrong. What use is a disobedient slave? Antony's eyes flew open again as he flinched, recoiling slightly. Hanyu, no! Please, you can't believe I think that! You matter so much more than your obedience. I don't care what use you are. You have to know that. But... Hanyu wasn't sure what protest would follow, but he didn't get the chance. Antony barreled on, looking positively frantic. I'm sorry for how I've treated you. I didn't understand about you at first. I'm sorry I sent you to the sitting room, and all the times I snapped at you or made you cry, and how I kept drinking your blood and arranging your hair without asking and making you read to me, and then I kissed you without permission. I'm sorry. I know how it seems. I know the last few months have been awful for you. I don't have any right to ask you this, but please try to believe that I just want you to be safe and happy. I don't care about anything else. Why was Antony apologizing for the best months of Hanyu's life? All he could do was stare at his master, frozen and, for once, speechless. Thaddeus makes you happy, Antony concluded, his gaze falling to the patch of floor between them. You can say his name and talk with him like you used to talk with me. You're not the one who ruined things between us. I am, for making you feel used and unsafe, and I'm sorry. You can go or stay, of course, whatever you want. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. There was too much there to process. Hanyu might have been rested, but there was only so much a brain could parse through, especially when he had seized on one particular thing, and it was making his eyes well up again, so powerfully that no amount of squeezing or tapping could stop the coming tide. I can stay, he whispered. You want me to stay? I want you to be safe and happy, Antony repeated, almost whispering himself. If you think you can feel safe and happy here, then, gods, yes, of course I want you to stay, Hanyu, more than anything. It was better than waking up rested, better than a fresh breeze, better than putting down a heavy load that had been carried far too long. He really means it. I didn't cry and manipulate him or beg until I changed his mind, not like before. This time he decided on his own. He means it. He wants me. He wants me. Hanyu burst into helpless, joyous, noisy tears. Antony, he wailed, and fell into his master's arms. Antony grunted, and Hanyu remembered belatedly that his bones were still healing. He tried to pull back, but the god's narrow arms had come up around him and held him in place loosely, but as implacably as iron beams. Good crying? Antony whispered. Yes, Hanyu sobbed. The best crying ever! The god huffed and held him just a little tighter. Well, that's all right then.